hello to everybody out there. It's always slightly strange doing the webinars for me because I know that you can see me, but all I can see is my own computer screen. So it's a little bit like talking into the void. But thank you all very much for giving up an hour of your lives to be here with us. I know that for many of you, it's going to have been a hectic week or a hectic couple of weeks with the beginning of the academic year. I first started teaching in 1993, 26 years ago. And even today, when I start a new class, I still have that slightly, strange mixture of feelings, a sort of nervous anxiety coupled with an excitement, a kind of feeling of butterflies in your stomach. And it's often said with football that a football player is only as good as their next match. And I've always felt teaching's very similar to this. It doesn't matter what you've achieved in the past. It doesn't matter how well your classes have gone before. What matters is your next lesson with your next class. And as I'm sure you know, when you're starting a new group, a new class, maybe at the beginning of a new term or a new academic year, the first couple of lessons are the high stakes lessons because, the old cliche about first impressions last. You often know quite quickly from the beginning of a group how the general atmosphere in the class is and how the vibe of the class is and how you feel it's going to go. And I guess for all of us, when we begin new classes, we have certain kinds of needs, certain kinds of desires of what we want from our first day with a new class. And for me, I think the primary thing that I'm really interested in with my new group is I want to get to know them as people. I want to find out a little bit about the group dynamic. I want to find out who's the extrovert, who are the shy people, who's going to be the class joker. I want to know something about who my students are, where they're from, why they're here with me, how long they've been studying, and I want to know something about them, what drives them, what motivates them, what do they love, what do they hate, what's their kind of, their inner world like. I want to know something about their thoughts and feelings and experiences and ideas and opinions. So I think working out ways of getting to that in the first day is very important. And at the same time, obviously, I'm not just there as a life coach or a kind of hired friend. I'm also there as their language teacher. And obviously, by getting to know more about the students as people and helping them to know more about each other, it gives you as a teacher the chance to know more about their level. I'm guessing for most of you, the students will have already been placed by level before they join the classes. And possibly, they'll have a book, kind of, A2 or B1 plus level or whatever, that's been given to them because the feeling is it will match where they are. But still, you want to find out about, what they can and can't do. You want to find out what they're strong at, what they're weak at. You also want to find out, which students are more confident about putting themselves forward and speaking, which students are maybe quite good, but a bit reticent, a bit shy, a bit reluctant to speak up in front of other people. And that's the kind of information that will become invaluable to you as you're going through and working with the group. I think the third thing is, right from the beginning, you want to make sure that the students in the class understand that the whole is more important than the individual. That in order for individual students to succeed, the whole group has to succeed. And I think actually it's sometimes a problem in English language teaching because, we all want to focus on the individuals. We want to think about our students as individuals, as we must. But we also need to remember that the collective, the group, is the most important thing. And that if everyone's pulling in different directions, it pulls the group apart. We need to, help students to gel, help students to kind of mold together. We need to help students interrelate with each other, interact with each other. And we need to do things right from the very beginning of a course to build group dynamics. I think the next point is possibly something overlooked. if you're thinking about getting to know the learners as people, finding out about their level, building group dynamics, and you're doing a lot of kind of, group building, getting to know you activities, I think sometimes maybe we forget that we also do need to teach students something new. I used to work as the head of the EFL department at University of Westminster. And one of the things I noticed was on the first day of new courses, we always had the highest number of students wanting to change their level. And, much more than you do in week 2 or week 3 or whatever, where the classes have settled down a little bit. And from talking to students, the most common perception they had was that they'd been put in the wrong level because they hadn't learned anything new. They hadn't been challenged enough. And they'd just been, probably because what the teachers were doing was more emotional and psychological. And, as I said, we need to be doing those things, but we also need to be thinking about making sure the students go away from their first class with us, having learned how to say things better, having learned some new language, having learned ways of expressing themselves that they didn't have when they first come into the class. On top of that, I think generally on the first day, first couple of days, you want to be familiarising your students with the material you're going to be using, with whatever course book it is that you're bringing into your students' classes. So, thinking about first things first, for me personally, when I go into a class and I've got my first lesson with them, the first thing, the most important thing is I want to learn their names. Different teachers have different ways of doing this. Some teachers like the students to write their names down so they can read them on the card, or they have little sticky badges. The way I do it myself is basically I just go in and say, "Hi, what's your name? And where are you from? Okay, whereabouts? Oh, I've been there. And what's your name? Okay, so we've got Marina and we've got Abdi. Okay, and what's your name? Where are you from? Okay, so we've got Marina, Abdi, and Miguel." And basically, I'll go through the class like that. I'll try to repeat all of the names. Probably, if you're anything like me, once you've been teaching a while, you get quite good at that trick of performing all of the names to the whole class after once or twice asking. And, it's quite impressive for students to kind of see that you've remembered their names. As with language learning, of course, it doesn't mean you remember all the names next time you're in the class, especially if students sit in different places. And I'm guessing for many of you, you're teaching students from the same country as yourself in kind of local contexts. For me, working in the UK, sometimes it can be a bit scary because I get classes with names that I'm not familiar with. All names are easy when you know them. I once had a group of South Korean students. I had 15 South Koreans, and all of the names were 2-syllable names and quite similar kind of sounding names when you're not used to them. So I had students like Nanju, Nansuk, Unsun, Unsu, UN. It was quite difficult for me to try to remember them. And next day they all moved around and sat in different places and I'd completely forgotten. And I think it's good in that kind of situation, actually, because the students realise you're human. I think when they see you maybe struggling or admitting that you've forgotten, maybe they see a little bit of their own struggle to learn English in your own problems of memorising things. Usually what I'll then do is I'll kind of repeat the names of the students, I'll practice my pronunciation of them, I'll perform it, then I'll get the students to stand up, walk around, just check you remember each other's names. Where are you from? Okay, sit down in pairs, just together, have a look around the room, check you can remember everyone's name and where they're from. So, you're starting on a personal kind of basis. I think then what's important is doing some kind of getting to know you activities. My apologies for the typo there. It's not getting to know your activities, it's getting to know you activities. And one of the important things that I think we can do on the first day is to add a kind of twist to these activities. And I'll be talking through some in a minute by starting with yourself. Okay, so some things you could do. You could say, okay, over the next few weeks, you're going to be learning a lot about each other. I'm going to be asking you to talk about your world, your lives, your experiences, thoughts, feelings, opinions, etc. To be fair, I'm going to begin the course by telling you a bit about myself. And that way you can choose what you want to say. You can, present whatever side of yourself you wish to present to your students. Give me 1 minute. Sorry, it's my pint mug of tea that keeps me going through the afternoons. You could twist it around a little bit and you could let the students interview you. The nice thing about doing it this way is it gives students a bit of control. It gives you the chance to find out, who the troublemakers in the class are, who the kind of slightly naughty students are who ask you maybe the slightly more personal questions. It also means they bond a little bit. They sit there together and they think about the questions they want to ask. I usually put students in pairs and give them 5 minutes to write questions. And I'll go round, help them out, see how good they are at making questions. And as I'll talk about in a minute, I'll also get some board work up on the board, some language work up on the board connected to the problems students are having. Then I'll just say, okay, so this group, your first question, okay, and this group over here, your next question, and I'll try to answer those questions as honestly as I can, okay? So that's another twist you can do. You could do the 4 true things, 1 false thing game. For example, you could tell students 5 things about you, as I'm going to do now. 4 of those things are true, 1 of those things is a lie. So, for example, I've been on national TV in 4 different countries. I've stepped on a 20-foot long python in the jungle. I've broken my left leg twice and my right leg once. I've played in a band who supported Nirvana the first time they came to the UK, and I've driven a huge big truck on a motorway. Okay, you can guess for yourself which one you think's true, which one you think's false. Okay, I'll tell you, I've never broken my leg, but the other ones were all true. Okay, then you can get the students to do the same thing. They can walk around and they can tell each other their things. You can encourage them to ask extra questions, find out more about each other. So again, it's a sort of chance for you to find out about the people, but also to find out about how good their level is, how good they are at expressing themselves. Another thing you could do, very simple, you could just say, okay, I'm just going to show you 5 photographs of important people in my lives, a bit strange, in my life. Talk about the people, who they are, why they're important to you, something about them. Maybe show 3 places that have been important for you. So, for me, I might show you Brixton in South London, Rye on the south coast of England, and Jakarta in Indonesia. All places I've spent quite a lot of my life living in. Okay, might talk about those. And then again, later the students can do the same. You can also do the my name, my hometown, my area of expertise. This generally works better if you're not teaching in your home country, but you may be able to adapt it in some way. So you just say, okay, my name's Hugh. My hometown is London and the south coast of England. And apart from teaching and writing, my area of expertise is I'm a good harmonica player. Okay. You then give the students a couple of minutes to ask questions about any of those 3 areas. Okay. So they might ask something like, what does your name mean? Why do you have the name you have? Why do you have 2 hometowns? How long have you been playing the harmonica? What do you play for? Do you play in a band, or do you play at home on your own, or what? And again, students can then do these things themselves. And I think the advantage of starting with you, even though it means a little bit of extra teacher talking time, is it humanizes you. Students realize that, you're an interesting human being. It relaxes students a little bit. It maybe makes them feel a bit more comfortable, makes them a bit more willing to talk about themselves. And it gives them breathing time. It gives them a kind of, space to think about their own output. What you then move on to, once you've modeled some of these tasks yourself and given your own versions, is getting students to do similar kinds of things, maybe in pairs, maybe standing up and walking around and mingling. And I think these activities should be designed to help students bond, but as I said, also to give you the chance to see what they can do, see what they're good at, what they're bad at. You could just get students to stand up, walk around, talk to different people for 2 minutes each, okay? Again, you can walk around, listen, see what they're having problems with, think about what you're going to give feedback on. If you want a more tangible outcome, you could then ask them to the whole class or just in little groups to present to their partners or to the whole class the first person they spoke to. Or you could just put them in pairs and they could share and compare what they learned about other students. Another thing you could do is to write a worksheet yourself with answers on and have students write questions that prompt them. So it could be things like, Hugh, England, London, I'm a teacher, okay? Yes, I do too, a girl and a boy, okay? 26 years, I started in 1993. And again, by doing it this way, it's a more controlled, more limited version of just getting students to interview you. So they can think of the questions, you can check the answers on the board, you can drill those things, what do you do? How long have you been doing that for? Are you married? Do you have any kids? How old are they? Do you have any brothers or sisters? Just kind of typical everyday getting to know you questions. It's amazing how many students struggle with kind of everyday normal questions. Often just simple things like, older or younger. Students will have quite complicated ways of asking those sometimes. So this can be a way of getting into that. You could do a 5 things we have in common kind of activity. I usually put students in pairs and say, okay, you've got 3 minutes, find 5 things you have in common. Again, it's a way for you to find out who the really extrovert, confident students are and who the minimum effort principle students are, where they basically kind of say, 5 things we have in common. 1, we're both trying to find things we have in common. 2, we're sitting in a room together. 3, you have eyes, I have eyes. 4, you're learning English, I'm learning English. Finished. Some students will do that. That's just the nature of the beast in a way. What you can then do is to make the groups bigger. So you create groups of 3 or 4, and they still have to find things they have in common. Then you have groups of 6 or 8, then you have the whole class. So it kind of balloons out like that. And again, you can get the students to choose how they wish to present themselves. They can show important photos on their own phones if you want. People in their lives, places in their lives. Another twist that you can think of is taking the classic English language classroom icebreaker, the find someone who, and thinking about different ways you can do it, okay? Obviously, you could just do a general find someone who activity, just getting to know you things. So it could be things like, find someone who comes from a large family, find someone who has children, find someone who has been studying English for more than 10 years, find someone who lives near here. What I often do with those is to get students to be a bit more supported and scaffolded. Before they walk around and find someone, I'll put them in pairs and I'll get them to think of the questions they're going to ask. So it'll be things like, how many brothers and sisters do you have? Or do you have any brothers or sisters? How long have you been learning English? Yeah, do you have any kids? So get them to think of the questions first, then to walk around and then maybe just report back to their partners what they learned. I usually have a little space on the find someone who printout where students can write each other's names as well. You can also, in a kind of twist, and I'll show you some examples of how to do this in a minute, You can use find someone who activities to pre-teach vocabulary that you're going to then encounter in the first unit of the book. And we'll see how to do that in a minute. You could also use find someone who's as a way of encouraging personalization of some of the language that they're going to be encountering early in the book. And in the same way, you could use it to encourage personalized practice of grammar they'll be meeting, to give you a sense of what they can already do with some of the grammar that they're going to be meeting. So let's look at how you might do some of this, okay? This is the first unit in the B1 plus level of roadmap that I co-authored with Andrew Walkley. And the basic focus is helping students get better at deciding where to eat, okay? In English, having those conversations about where's a good place to go and eat. And this is the vocabulary that they learn connected to eating out. You can see in bold the kind of the on-level target vocabulary there: service, packed, terrace, vegetarian, fish place, suit you, suit me, spicy food, quality, delicious, wait ages, get your order wrong, allergic, seafood, etc. If you know this is the vocabulary that they're going to be working with, and you're still on the kind of, you know, group bonding stage of the first lesson, you can do something like this. So you can have a find someone who, which gets the students to do a little bit of kind of team teaching, if you like. So you have things like find someone who knows why you might need to book in advance. Well, if a restaurant's very busy and very popular, you need to book in advance. Maybe if tickets for something are going to sell out quickly, you need to book in advance. What's the opposite of putting up prices? Well, cutting prices, lowering prices. 3 things you can be allergic to: cats, peanuts, and homework. 3 things that are really spicy, you know, Indian food, Thai food, Mexican food. What happens if the waiter gets your order wrong? Well, you know, you order the vegetarian option and they bring you the steak, and your friend orders the fish and they get the chicken. So these kinds of questions are kind of questions about the language that the students are going to encounter. And it gives them the chance to learn from each other, to pre-learn some of the vocabulary that you're then going to look at. Another way you could do this is to take some of the vocab you're going to be teaching and just make a more personal find someone who. So you get things like this: find someone who's a vegetarian, find out why. Find someone who knows someone who's allergic to something, what, get details, etc. The nice thing about this way of doing it is it's a little bit more personal. You know, it's kind of a learning about each other. And again, what you can do is you can give them a couple of minutes to read through, think about the questions they're going to ask, and ask you or look up any of the vocabulary here. And you'll see that I've put the target vocabulary in bold. Gives them the chance to get to grips with the vocabulary before they do some speaking about it. And then when you do move on and you start the first unit, the students kind of realize, this is that vocabulary that came up in the find someone who activity. See what the teacher did there. It creates a kind of a thread or a link that unites the different sections of your lesson. On top of all of this, and bearing in mind the idea of the first lesson being a time when you do also need to be teaching something new, I think it's important to think about the feedback that we give as teachers on the students' output, okay? And to think about how we can turn the output of individual students into input that's useful for the whole group. And it's thinking about really the role of the teacher as primarily being helping the students to say in better English things that they want to say, which means using student speaking as a chance to both directly correct and reformulate. So the correction might be something like, while the students are thinking of questions, you're looking at the questions they're making, or while they're asking each other questions, you're hearing questions that they're trying to ask, and you just write some of the strange ones or some of the incorrect ones on the board. Maybe in the middle of the speaking or if they're writing questions together before they actually interview each other. You just say, okay, so you've got some great questions. Let's look at some of the problems and how to say them better. I saw these 4. How long you are working as a teacher? Should be, that's right. How long have you been working as a teacher? Why you decided? That's right. Why did you decide? Good. What's your occupation? Yeah, more normal way of saying in English. What do you do? Okay. Do you married? Yeah. Are you married? When did you get married? But are you married? My favorite. Have you siblings? Do you have any brothers or sisters? Have you got any brothers or sisters? Or you could do it more like this. Okay. You could think about ways of saying things that the students might say or have tried to say or could have tried to say. And while they're talking themselves, you get this kind of thing up on the board. And at the end of the speaking, you stop and say, okay, that was great. I heard some really interesting things. Let's look at how to say them better. So some of you have this personal question. How old are you? Especially if you're asking someone older, they may not want to answer this question. So to be polite, how much do you weigh? How much do you earn? Why did you 2 get divorced? Why don't you have any children? If you don't mind me asking, good. So again, it's a way for you to find out how much they know. It's a way for you to give them a slightly better version of what they've been trying to say. Kind of, it's giving their output a makeover, if you like. And because you're writing it in whole sentences, it's directly connected to what the students themselves have tried to say, might have been trying to say. And they get to write this down in their book, they get to take this home, they go away from the class feeling like, okay, I learned some new stuff today. Makes them less likely to go and complain to the director of studies that they're in the wrong level. So I think once you've done all of these things, once you've done telling students about yourself, once you've done some kind of icebreakers, some minglers, some feedback based on all of that, you probably then want to get on and do some teaching. And maybe what you might want to do is just ease students into the course book a little bit. So if you wanted to, and if you were using Roadmap, you could tell students the name of the book. You could ask, why do you think it has this name? Okay, you could maybe give your own explanation. You know, it's a when you're going through language, it's a long, hard journey. The terrain, the territory is often unknown. You don't always know the best direction to go in. So you want something that provides you with a map to give you the most direct route to where to walk towards where you're going. But also, of course, road maps allow you little bits of, off-map exploration. You can take side tracks. You can go on little diversions and explore things. So you could talk about the kind of metaphorical title if you wanted. You could show the students the cover. You could ask them, what do you think the image is suggesting? Speed, progress. You can ask if they like the cover or not. In a sense, it doesn't matter if they do or they don't. The important thing is that they think about it, they have an opinion about it, they try and express that opinion. Maybe you teach a little bit of language to help them express that opinion better. What you can then do is open the book, and on the back of the front cover, you'll see a list of resources that are available for students. So there's information about the app that goes with the Roadmap series. There's information about the portal and the audio and visual material that's available for students on the portal. And there's information about My English Lab. If you are a teacher who allows smartphones or tablets or whatever in class, you may even want to get the students set up there and then with some of these things. You may want them to access the app or to kind of, create their own accounts or whatever you're going to do with them in terms of the portal and the My English Lab. So that's a good way for them to become aware of the fact that they're not just using the book and the classroom. They've got this extra digital realm available to them that they can use and explore in their own free time that will help them, down the road with their English. What you might then do is to look at the contents page, which you can see here, and just to discuss how the book works. With Roadmap, there's basically two routes that you can take. There's what we've called the fast track route, which is basically just the double page lessons in the front of the book, each one of which helps the students have a particular kind of conversation. Okay. At the back of the book, you've got the extended route, which is what we call the develop your lessons. So you have in each unit a kind of connected develop your writing, develop your reading, develop your listening section. And you can talk students through how the book works and the structure of it. But I think you can also get students to vote, to prioritize the areas that they want to work on and to plan their own routes through the units. Some students may primarily want to just focus on speaking and listening. Some students, because of the length of the course, may decide that they want the fast track route. They may decide that some units are more interesting or desirable for them than others, if it's a very short course. Some classes, particularly if they've got kind of exam needs or academic needs or professional needs, they may decide that they want to also focus on developing their writing. So you can have that discussion with the group, you can have that negotiation with them at the beginning of the class. You might even do a quiz, you might even write a few kind of comprehension questions, you know, in which unit will you learn the grammar for talking about blah, blah, blah. What do you think the reading connected to unit 4 is, etc. Okay, which of the 4 units in unit 4, spreads in unit 4, do you think the reading connects to, why, etc. Yeah, so you know, you could do something like that. For me then, I would just get on and start doing some teaching personally. Give me a minute. So I think you begin by opening up the book, have a look at page 6, okay, unit 1A. You can state the goal of the first spread, show them the grammar and the vocabulary that's going to help them. So in this unit, you're going to get better at deciding where to eat out in English. You're going to learn some grammar to help you do this. We're going to be looking at noun phrases. You're going to learn some vocabulary connected to eating out, all of which will help you have these conversations better. And at the end of this particular lesson, you know, you're going to do some speaking, deciding where to eat, using all of the language we've looked at. One of the strange things for me, being a teacher and a trainer and a coursebook writer, is I often get asked, well, how do you use the book yourself? And I guess I have some kind of rules of thumb, some principles that I think are things that I always apply to what I'm doing in the classroom. And one of those is I would always model the speaking tasks myself, partly because I think it's important for students to see you as a human being, partly because I think it's good, focused teacher talking time. It's a way for students to get a bit of thinking time, to prepare themselves, to get some ideas together. And it's a way for me as a teacher to feed in some language that might help the students when they take their own turns. Sometimes when I'm modeling a task myself, I'll say something and I can see students noting it down and then using it themselves. I also believe that we should basically use all student speaking as a chance to teach something new, not just as a chance for them to practice using what they already have, but as a chance for us to listen to the gaps and think about what could be added to where they're at, okay? And we'll look at some examples in a minute. I also believe that it's important to use the time when the students are doing exercises as a chance to monitor, to help out, see how they're getting on, but also as a chance to get some connected language up onto the board, okay? Then when you're checking the answers, you can explore the extra language, you can look at some of the stuff you've got on the board. You can also draw attention to features of connected speech yourself, using your own voice. And I'll talk you through how this might work in a minute. And as I said, you can then look at the connected language on the board. You can ask questions about the language in the book that you're looking at that will help you to generate connected language, okay? So there's a kind of coursebook plus that you're getting all the time. just quickly, I'll talk through briefly how I would approach this myself, okay, what I would do with it. So you begin here with a little bit of speaking. How often do you go out for lunch or dinner? Where do you usually go? Which of the places look like your kind of place to eat? So I'd begin by giving my own answer. Well, I don't really go out for lunch that often. I often eat at home, to be honest. I'm not a huge lunch eater. Often I'll just have a fried egg on toast or some fried rice, a little bit of salad maybe. Sometimes I might pop out and pick up a sandwich, you know, that sad cold English lunch staple. In terms of going out for dinner, I guess I don't go out for dinner as often as I used to before I had kids. I go out maybe once or twice a month, maybe. I live in an area of North London famous for its Turkish and Kurdish restaurants, so we often go down to a place called Shalale. Been going there for many years and know the owner and the staff, and sometimes get special discounts in the summer. I then get students to do the speaking themselves, and obviously it won't take long. It's a 2 or 3 minute bit of speaking. From that, I might write things up on the board, like how often do you go out for lunch? How often do you go out for dinner? H-E, maybe only once or twice a year, or once or a month, or 3 times a week, okay? And then I just look at how to say things like hardly ever, maybe once a year, once or twice a month, 2 or 3 times a week, okay? So again, just feeding in a little bit of extra language. Then with the vocabulary exercise, which you can see here, the way I do it is give them a few minutes to match the comments 1 to 8 with the responses A to H. They can ask me if there's any vocab they're not sure of. Give them a couple of minutes to check their answers in pairs. While they're doing this, I would probably also write a few connected things on the board. So I might write something like, the service has been really good. We should leave a ... Okay. I'm allergic to cats. If I go near them, I start s ... Then as I'm going through, I'll be saying things like, okay, so number 1, the service in there is terrible. Yeah, the service in there is terrible. The answer? That's right, D. I know, the last time I went, we waited ages to be served, and they still got our order wrong. And I'll often read out the answers myself like that, slowing down slightly and deliberately exaggerating the way the words join together, okay? So that they get that kind of practice of hearing the language that they can see on the page. I'll also ask connected things, you know, so service is terrible. Any other reasons why the service might be terrible, apart from the fact that you have to wait a long time? Yeah, maybe they're just quite rude. Maybe they mix your order up. And what's the opposite? Yeah, great service. And if the service is great, you leave a little bit of money at the end. You leave a tip. Good. Okay, I'd write that up on the board. So I'd be checking the answers, saying things myself, and looking at little bits of connected language that I've got up on the board, okay? Just to kind of give students a little bit of further input for the strong students who want to go away thinking, I really learned something there. What I then do is, if you look in exercise B, there's a little task there, okay, which is take turns saying and responding the comments and the follow-up comments. Try to continue the conversation. If I wanted to push the students, and I often do, I'd say, okay, you've got 2 minutes, try to remember the comments, okay? I know it's difficult, don't worry, try, okay? Then I put them in pairs, A, B, A, B, A, B. B, close your books. A, say the sentences in 1 to 8. B, see if you can remember the responses. So, you know, it would be things like, isn't it a bit cold to sit on the terrace? No, they have some outdoor heaters. Okay, they have those outdoor heaters. Okay, so I think, you know, encouraging students to try and do a bit of memorizing is important, because to learn, it's not enough just to do the exercise and get the things right. You need to pay attention, you need to think about the language. There's then some speaking, working groups, discuss the questions. Again, I would usually begin by saying, you choose first 2 questions for me, okay? I'd give my own answers. As the students were speaking, maybe get them to walk around, mingle, get to know each other a little bit better. And again, I'd pick up on 2 or 3 bits of language. You know, do you like spicy food? I do, but I can't H if it's really hot. I can't handle it if it's too hot. I can't handle it if it's really hot. Just to teach an extra little bit. The degree to which you do that yourself obviously depends on the level of the class, depends on how much time you have, it depends on, you know, many pressures. But I think it's a good rule of thumb to try to give a little bit of extra input after student speaking. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into how I would approach things. For me, it's very much about thinking about the language and how to go deeper into the language and to explore the language in a bit more depth, and how to get the students to engage and connect the language a bit more to their own realities. Finally, a good thing to do, get the students to go around and check each other's names. Maybe you do it first. So you say, okay, so just to finish off today, I'm going to tell you your names in case you've forgotten. Okay, so we've got Marina, okay, we've got Abdi, and we've got Miguel. Okay, go around the room, get them to walk around, check each other's names, what they remember about each other. Again, it's another chance to teach things like, I'm really sorry, but I've forgotten your name. I'm really sorry, I can't remember yours. What was your name again? I'm sorry, I've got a terrible memory. Okay, then set some homework. For me, the first homework is always go home, try to remember what we've looked at in class today. Okay, meaning both the language in the book and the language from the board. Yeah, and usually I'll begin the next lesson with just some kind of test, yeah, some kind of quick revision exercise or revision game. I've written a book called Teaching Lexically, which explores lots of ideas about revising and recycling language, if you're interested. Then I think if there's time, you might discuss learning plans for the term. You might say, okay, so, you know, we've started out on our journey through English. It's going to be a long road. It's a hard drive. How much time are you planning to devote to studying? Let's agree an amount we're all going to try and do every day. Let's say 15 minutes a day. How much homework is it realistic for me to set you guys? You know, are you going to do it if I do set it for you? How much of it's going to be self-checking, online, digital? How much of it's going to be you doing some writing and giving the writing to me and me giving feedback? Then I think probably it's a good idea to also set something from the portal or from the app, go away and have a look at the resources that are available there connected to the first lesson that you've done. And off you go, you're up and running, you've started well, and you know, you've kind of built the group, you've built the team, you've done some teaching, you've eased the students into the book, and you've started off along the road to better English. As you can see, Roadmap's an 8-level series. Hopefully you'll find the levels that are exactly right for your students and for your classes.